Pacific Rim Extinction. We've been looking at some core tactics, some starting ideas, examining the rules, talking about terrain placement and the different types of terrain. Now it's time to jump into the miniatures themselves. And for me, this was a kind of an interesting place to start. I was going to kind of do 50-50 or randomly choose it. Do we go with the Jaegers? Do we go with the Kaiju on there? And I have to say, I've been having a blast playing both sides, but I'm going to jump in with the Kaiju. We're going to work our way through the Wave 1. And one of the things that I've really enjoyed playing is the chance to play this like super space DNA enhanced dragon with biomorphs on there, and really its representation as an avatar on the table. Just my mental link controlling these monsters. It's really, really interesting. And I thought the great place to start would be literally with the release of the different waves and starting with the core set, pushing out from there. So we're going to explore Shrike Thorn. He's the first Kaiju in the starter set on there, and a very, very interesting Kaiju in that the combinations that it is able to pull off requires a little bit of finesse. We're going to talk generally here. Essentially, the Jaegers want to shoot, although certainly they have a lot of great close combat attacks and other abilities, but they have a number of ranged attacks. So you've got some range ability and you've got some close assault ability. The Kaiju are a little bit on the opposite side. They want to favor getting into the assault. They want to favor those close combat attacks, and shooting is secondary. And this is kind of a generalization, a way to approach. So tactically, of course, modified a little bit by the mission and the terrain placement, you are mapping your avenue of approach. You're going to try and block line of sight. You're going to try and utilize run abilities. You're going to try and double move. You're going to try and get up there so literally you can just smash face and try to maximum overload as much damage as you can. And Shrikethorn does this because if it can get close and get in there while utilizing terrain and some of that rage, things are going to get really, really interesting really, really fast. So tactically, with all of the pieces in the game, with the Jaegers and the Kaiju, I've found it useful in trying to unlock combinations and trying to begin to explore strategies to break the cards up into three groups. The first group is your primary offensive abilities. So essentially, what does it do? How does it do it? This is going to be the focus of our strategy. This is kind of tier 1 overall, what we're going to look to leverage on the table. Tier 2 are cards that allow you, I'm trying to think of the best way to describe such a dynamic game and dynamic figure. Tier 2 allows you a way to push more speed or unlock some core abilities in there. It's going to really depend on the opportunity setting up for tier 1. And then the tier 3, something that you're going to utilize when you're out of position. It's not the primary focus. It's not the best ability out there, but it's something that at least you can utilize while you're getting into position, or if you get outmaneuvered a little bit on there. So tier 1, in this order, we start with Furious Slam. This is a close combat attack, and if you roll one or more triggers on the action dice on there, so we've got the success, the explosion, and the trigger, then if you spend rage, you can slam the target back a hex for each rage spent on there. Besides being the base attack, this gives you the ability, when you're making it up there, to literally slam and perhaps knock into a building, or perhaps slam into another Kaiju, or just kind of manipulate movement on your own turn. And 1 or 2 hexes doesn't seem like much. You start with 1 rage. Shrike Thorn starts with 1. You can juice up to 2. But being able to move, especially in a hex-based game, being able to move your opponent's piece out of the regular turn cycle, that opens up a lot. And this is going to then play into Death Grip in a moment, because think about it tactically. For the most part, and this is true in Pacific Rim, but also other war games that are out there, I move my piece, I activate an ability, I roll some dice, maybe I have another card that can do something. I generally really can't interact with yours. You're going to make your move, whether I'm going first or you're going first, and then you're done. So if I have the ability to slam, to push you back, being able to wedge things in. Now, the game itself, Pacific Rim, being hex-based, it's kind of 50-50 in here in that you can play on an open gaming table. You use the ruler to move, and the terrain is mounted on hex bases. And that speeds up play tremendously because you're going to realize what you're in contact with, where you're going, and what you're boxed or sandwiched in. Ideally, I'd like to use Furious Slam and slam you into a secondary Kaiju on there, but some terrain or some mountains or a building will work just as well. So Furious Slam, that's going to kind of be the core attack that we're going to look to be utilizing, possibly spending a little bit of that rage if we can get a trigger on there. And you should be able to generate one trigger a turn. I mean, of course, if you roll Legendary, that's different, but one trigger. This leads us to Death Grip, and the text is really interesting. So it's going to cost you a rage. And this is kind of a side note in a second for a moment. What I love tactically about this game is resource management with, I was going to say ammunition. I guess it's ammunition, Kaiju blood, juice, whatever on there. Many war games, you have unlimited ammo on there. You have unlimited ammo. So this allows you to get into positions if you play a game. Warhammer 40,000, I love 40K. Unlimited ammo in there. And some people might say, well, the timing of the game is such that things are happening, 30, 40 seconds. A battle maybe lasts 5 minutes. Are you really going to run out of ammo? But what this means is in games that don't utilize ammo, if you have a shot and it's an extreme shot, you take it because it's not resource management. Pacific Rim, you're at long range or you're maneuvering and you don't have the best position, but you can shoot. You have to make a decision. Maybe it's the right decision and take the shot, or maybe tactically you want to hold back a little bit and see what happens, conserve it. I really like the ammo management. At first I didn't. I'm like, I want to use my abilities every turn. I want to do tail spikes every turn. I want to be, laying on the full press, the Death Grip. But then I realized, well, timing, you got to set things up. It's not as straightforward, the Kaiju just running up and smashing face on there, although that is kind of a viable strategy. So Death Grip, it's going to cost you a rage. If you've moved this turn, you may not activate Death Grip. That's key. If you haven't moved this turn, if you have moved this turn, you can't activate Death Grip. And this attack gains +3 to your power. If the attack is successful, you can return your target's face-up card to their hand instead of dealing damage on there. +3 power, so that means base attack skill, plus power, +3 power. That's a bucket load of dice. That's rolling average. You're going to inflict 1 or 2 damage. Almost a given. I mean, of course, in a dice game, nothing's given. If you roll less than that, you may still pull off 1. If you roll Legendary on there, you could essentially one-shot a Jaeger on there, but definitely dealing 2 damage. I mean, that's big, and now you're forcing your opponent to, if you're playing the Jaegers, now you're forcing your opponent to either to take the damage on the face-up card or randomize it on there. Not the easiest choice to make. But this is where the setup with Furious Slam and Death Grip comes in. Being a dynamic game, you can disengage the Jaeger. You can move. So it's almost like I got to slam you into something, get you up there potentially blocked with some other things. If I have you blocked in, then I can utilize Death Grip. So it's going to be a little bit of a tag team. I find in the core set playing it, it's been very it's been harder to pull it off, and this is the nature of the 1 versus 1 type game. As soon as you start adding in some of the other machines and some of the other kaiju, now these tactics really, really open up. But Furious Slam, Death Grip. Then we move to Tail Swipe. So this is still Tier 1. These are the primary cards out of the 6 that I find myself utilizing the most. Make a close combat attack, then pivot. And this attack may only be made against targets in your rear arc, so rear facing. One-on-one, am I ever really going to allow someone to get behind me? That's the first thought. So you're looking at the starter set perspective and you're saying, is that really going to ever happen? I mean, you could lose the initiative. The kaiju go first, you roll the die, you could lose it. It might be in a situation, possibly, but that's going to be pretty rare, 1-to-1. Against multiple machines, against multiple Jaegers, this becomes a lot more useful. This also becomes useful based on the mission. Now, of course, we have the core mission, and then we have individual victory points and stuff. But this makes Shrike Thorn kind of a delaying kaiju, kind of where you don't want to get surrounded and get beat on, but if you had to, at least I have something for that rear arc on there. So if I can get into a position and maybe I'm surrounded and kind of bottleneck and it's a delaying action, you've got that tail swipe on there. I thought this was initially in the Tier 3 cards, meaning the power that it's nice to have, but it's going to be very situational. Am I going to use it? But in moving out from the starter set to, as of this vlog, Wave 1, we're throwing down, other monsters on the table and other Jaegers and stuff. It's a little more powerful situational than you think. So then we have the Tier 2 cards for them. And these are cards that maneuverability. If I'm not actually physically attacking, physically trying to smash face and lay down the body slam, and I'm making my way forward through the terrain, we have Rage and Natural Reflexes. So Rage is going to gain my full Rage, jack up, or run on there. Now, at the beginning of the game, we're kind of at long distance based on deployment. And that's really where I want to kind of look to rage up, if I can, on there. Go above the starting, just go all Bane, flip out, get that kaiju rage going, and then from there move out. So being able to, once you're engaged, meaning once you're within range of shooting, or you're forced to close and either make your normal movement or run, that's not the time to be raging up. I want to get that rage currency for Furious Slam and Death Grip ahead of time. So it's like in the beginning, before we've engaged, I want to hit the rage, save it, and then move from there. Natural Reflexes is going to unlock your tactical actions. That's really kind of dependent on the mission. That's kind of dependent on the terrain and other things on there. It's Tier 2 because it's going to happen. We're going to utilize it. But this is on the way in, and this is situational. Tier 3. Abilities that, and I'm using this breakdown, this tactical breakdown, Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3, for all the Jaegers and for all the Kaiju. This is, again, just kind of the way to be able to see the utilization of the cards. What have I been using the most in every game? And kind of what's the focus of this model? What are we optimally trying to do? How can it optimally succeed? Tier 2 is the stuff that we're going to utilize, but it's situational or on the way in. And Tier 3 is the weakness. So certainly in true Kaiju fashion, Shrike Thorn, he wants to get up there and smash things. We're going to Furious Slam. We're going to Death Grip. If I get surrounded, we're going to Tail Swipe. I'm going to Rage up there on there. But at least you have something to shoot at. So Fire Tail Spikes, short range. So you might say, well, short range, then why not, move and start slamming on there? That's not always possible based on the positioning of terrain and based on the positioning of the Jaegers that you're facing on there. When attacking, so I have to use a Kaiju Blue on there. This, in terms of, can we call the Kaiju Blood ammo? I guess so. Ammo management, I find, for Shrike Thorn isn't as much of a problem, simply because being a tier 3 card, I'm not going to be utilizing it as much. I'm going to be trying to smash face. So in the beginning of this vlog, there was this tactica question where it's like, if you have a shot, do you take it? Generally with the Jaegers, no, because we have limited ammo. Shrike Thorn's the exact opposite, being a close combat beast. Literally, I feel like I do want to fire the tail spikes if I can do it on there. I'll spend that Kaiju Blood. Plus, we have a number of starting to do that. We start at 2, so at least we have 2 shots on there. Short-ranged attack. When attacking, if you roll 1 or more triggers, this attack is accurate. So it has the potential to do a little bit of damage. I find it as a delaying action. So I can't say the exact situation, because the terrain, while the pieces are set for the mission, or I should say suggested, you're going to deploy them and try to figure out based on what's going on. So there are going to be times, for whatever reason, where I'm not favored to engage. Maybe I'm clustered behind some cover on there, and there's 2 Jaegers that are waiting outside of that. If I charge in, I'm going to engage 1-to-1. Even if I really roll heavily on there, the second one will hit base to base, and now I'm taking on 2. I'll go down in 1 turn, or maybe 2 turns on there. So we're at this kind of like, what do we do? Where do we go? What happens? Certainly the Jaegers are going to be shooting at me, but now if I fire the tail spikes, generally speaking, if you're unsure of what your opponent's going to do, fire something at them. Roll some dice. Give them the threat of damage. So another example with tail spikes is to flush something out. If a unit is hiding, and by hiding I mean not blocking line of sight, but maybe has some terrain where they can dash behind or move to on there. Or, maybe an example, if you're playing 2 Jaegers, there's 2 pieces of terrain. One is kind of out in the open so it can shoot at you, and then the other one is hiding behind terrain to bait you in. So they're putting this question to the table. Do you want to hang out and I'll shoot at you? Or being primarily a close combat beast, Shrike Thorn, do you want to run forward and engage? And if you do that, then I'm going to hit you with 2 mechs on there. Fire the tail spikes. See what happens. Take the shot. See that motivation. And I won't say 9 times out of 10, but generally speaking, when someone's in a position where they're waiting or you're unsure of what to do, I notice as soon as you shoot, that's going to force their hand to play. So this is kind of like a card of discovery. It's a tier 3 card. It's the last down there because it's not my primary focus. It's not what I want to do with this model. Given there, I'm going to try and leverage the awesome close combat ability of it. A dynamic piece, a really dynamic piece, and I have to say, as part of the starter set, it really surprised me, because what a lot of starter sets that you see, they'll offer you kind of generic units or filler units. An example of that, and you guys know if you've been following some of my vlogs and checking out stuff on my blog, you know that I love X-Wing miniatures. I do, and the starter sets, both for version 1 and the current version on there, they're good. They give you some stuff, but they're just kind of generic, generic TIE fighter on there. And what was interesting was the starter set for Pacific Rim, the pieces were not generic. The pieces were not stripped down. They're active pieces that you're going to utilize in your collection. They're individual. I mean, they're individual pieces that are there. So I was really surprised to, while it certainly has the focus, to have such dynamic play out of a starter set is kind of unique. Okay, we have to kind of balance this out. I was going to jump into the next, but let's start, I guess, to balance it out. We'll look at one of the Jaegers on here and kind of put our way through. And again, these vlogs are just a starting point, just looking for the combos, looking for what's optimal on the table, and looking at it as an individual. Certainly there's going to be tag teams. Certainly I find the game on a side note, and then we'll finish this out. I find the game wants to play at 3 pieces per side on there. That gives you enough for different combinations. That gives you enough if you're going to activate 1 or 2 units. If you miss a turn, there's some consequences on there. And it doesn't make it fully swingy in that if one goes down, if you lose your Jaeger or the Kaiju goes down, you're now not riding solo on there. You still have at least another piece. You're going to have to go tactically defensive, absolutely. But you have something that you can utilize there.